Hey everybody, my name is Christopher Donnell and I'm one of the pastors at Urbana UMC, and it's my pleasure to have Warren Fitzpatrick here with us today. Warren works at Adriel and he's part of the training and development team there, and he manages that. And he's been involved in foster care and programs for almost 20 years and beyond of that. So Warren has a heart for fostering, and this all started this conversation around Foster Awareness Month. So, hey, Warren, would you tell us a little bit about foster care and what that means to you, and how your journey started that with foster care?
Sure. Well, we started. Let me back up just a little bit. I knew that I was going to work with kids, probably in the same way you knew you were going to work with kids.
Yeah.
There was a calling there, and it stuck with me. And so I went to a Christian college, and I was preparing to be a youth pastor because I thought that's the only thing I could possibly do that would allow me to work with kids.
Yeah.
And while I'm attending there was a speaker who came in, and he talked about the need for Christian social workers. Wow. And I went, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about calling, that's pretty normal. That's
Yep.
pretty normal. And I was just like, I don't really want to do that.
Yep.
I'm not gonna go down that road. I left that school, got married, and my wife and I were living in West Virginia, kind of scraping by, and I would look in the Columbus area periodically. My wife at the time, she was a social worker for West Virginia Children's Bureau, and I seen this ad for Adriel.
Okay.
And I was like, hey dear, do you think this would be something we could do together? And the ad was for people to live in the home with the children.
Okay.
We called them teaching parents.
Yep.
It would be considered a group home,
Yep.
that kind of situation. She was like, yeah, I think we could probably do that. And so we applied and we came, and 19 years later, here I am. There's a lot that happened during that time period. But, it was that call for children, and then God kind of pulling that in. And somewhere in there, I read James 1:27, and like sometimes some things just highlight themselves.
Yep.
You don't even need to put a highlighter on it.
Yep.
Because God said, or in this case, James wrote that, true religion is to care for widows and orphans. And it kind of stuck with me. And so I think it just kind of all goes together. And, that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, that's a big conviction, to care for widows and orphans, because it's really easy to dismiss widows and orphans as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially as we get comfortable in our everyday lifestyle, right?
And we don't see them.
We don't see them.
I think that, and honestly, you were talking about foster care month.
Yes.
It's because people don't see.
Yeah.
They don't know, or if they do see, it's things that are the more difficult parts of it.
Yeah.
They're not going to see the joys because it's just there.
Yeah.
If they don't have anybody in their life who is on that foster journey, then they have no way of really knowing.
So what's the foster situation, the scope of it in America look like, and maybe what we see here regionally here in Adriel, Ohio? And
so I can't give you any national numbers.
Okay.
I can tell you that there's a lot more children in care than there is homes to care for them. And so a lot of times you end up with situations where they're putting kids, for instance, like what I did. When I worked, I was supposed to work with kids who couldn't make it in foster care for one reason or the other, or they got in trouble with the law.
Sure.
That was my job.
Yep.
Foster care is not necessarily that.
Right.
But there are situations where, because the state can't place them in a home, they have to put them somewhere.
Right.
And so they move them to these facilities or these group homes where kids who are, not much different than yours are introduced to more challenging behaviors. And of course, what happens, I don't know about your little ones, but do they not follow the older ones?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, following the leader.
Yeah. And so you end up with the challenges of that. And then, residential is not meant to be a long-term fix. Where foster care, you can be there for 2 years, 3 years, that sort of thing. It's not, that's not a home.
Right.
And so those are problems. We even, you want to talk nationally, we can talk about the border right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have kids who are going to be coming up this way in Michigan and whatever, just because it's so overwhelming down there.
Yeah.
There's such a need for people to care for these children, so they're not in that situation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you talk about your conviction of caring for orphans and widows. There's a huge need.
Yeah.
A huge need. So what can we do to learn more, educate? What kind of education is there? Because if I would have received an email from you about Foster Awareness Month, I would have never have known about Foster Awareness Month. What can be done? What's the boots on the ground? What's the next steps? What are things and ways that we can rally around that?
So in terms of what our agency's doing is really using this month as an opportunity outreach, and reaching out to churches is certainly a big part. And Adriel's, honestly, we polled our foster parents and asked, why did you choose Adriel? Because there's options. There's a lot of really good foster care agencies, and you could even work with a county in some cases. And none of those are bad. None of those, some people may have different experiences,
Sure.
but it's all working with children.
Right.
But across the board, 75% of the parents said it was because of the mission of Adriel. Adriel's goal is to raise children up and to present Christ's love to them.
Yeah.
And of course the agency can't do that. We only do that through the foster parents, and that's why they come to us. A lot of the recruitment comes through churches, because they start to, again, it's you have a foster parent in the church, and then you go, you're watching them and you're going, oh, well, that's not as scary as I thought it was going to be. And
so, speaking to the scary part of fostering, do you have any stories that would encourage folks to look a little deeper into what fostering is, that would encourage them to see, hey, this is really rewarding, it makes an impact, and it's not as bad or as scary as it seems? You got any situations? Or
one of my jobs is evaluator, and that basically means I go in and I talk to the foster parents and find out the work that they do, and then write up a big report. One of them I was blessed to meet, and around, I want to say it's about 20 to 25% of the kids in care, and this was in 2018.
Okay.
It takes a little while to get all those numbers.
Yeah.
So in 2018, about a quarter of the kids, give or take, was in care because of drug dependency issues. And it's not unusual in Urbana. It's not unusual anywhere in the state of Ohio.
Right.
Well, that's pretty much what she specialized in. She would honestly go pick up a child from, the hospital right after they'd been born, and she would have to go through some challenges there. You have withdrawals. The baby's going to have to go through, and that's challenging. I'm not, again, if you're taking on a foster child, you're taking on a child that has had trauma in their life. Across the board, every single one of them. But that baby needs somebody. And that's the crux of this particular story. I was talking to her, and somebody at her church came up to her just after she had taken a child back to the mother. The mother, now keep in mind, she had brought this child home to her home from the hospital. And she had went through the withdrawals, and she had done everything, to get the child well and at a better place. And mom did too. Mom
That's awesome.
did what she needed to do, and she got clean. And she handed that baby back to mom.
Wow.
And
that's awesome.
The person at their church came up to him and said, I couldn't do what you do. You work, with these kids, and then you just hand them back to their parents. And her answer was the purest foster care answer that I've ever heard. She said, I can get therapy, but these children need me now. And, here I am, I'm interviewing and I'm doing my work and I'm like pulling my tears because I'm like, oh my gosh, what more of a sacrifice can you make?
Right. Well, and that's such a beautiful story of redemption and restoration.
Yes.
And I think, a lot of times we think kids just go into foster systems and they never get reunited. We don't always hear the reunited stories and people getting clean and people pulling themselves and other people pulling them out of the miry clay, the pit, right? And then they have a successful life after that. And I think that's encouraging because sometimes it is just for a season, right? It doesn't mean you have to have these kids forever, but you have them when they need you.
And they have you. Because one of the differences between residential and foster care is that ongoing connection. Those kids don't forget their foster parents, especially if you are a support and you love those kids. They know that and they feel that in the same way. The kids you work with don't forget you. Even if you don't get to see them very often, they don't forget who Chris is. And so that it's a lot, but it's even more so because not take anything away from the work you do, but
for sure.
There's a difference between them being in your home and that connection that you can have in the church.
That's kind of our philosophy here at UMC is we try to do small groups and try to equip parents to be the primary disciplers. Because, youth group, you get a kid for 1 hour a week. But at home, they're with mom and dad and siblings. And, man, if we can equip parents and foster parents to disciple and be Jesus at home, that's where all the magic happens, right?
If you can change that, that's where you're going to change the family for sure.
So how, the need is foster parents, really, right?
That's a huge, always.
So what if somebody watching this today has thought about fostering or interested to learn more, or even what next steps could be for that? What would you encourage someone to do? How would you lead them next?
So I'm going to speak for Adriel in this sense. Again, I know that there's other agencies, but I can't speak to how you would do that. For Adriel, we have a website, adriel.org. You go on there and there'll be a button that says interested in foster parents and you select that. It's going to connect you. Somebody's going to reach out to you at that point and they'll kind of guide you through it. The process right now, because of COVID, and COVID's had a lot of negative impacts for sure, but in terms of becoming a foster parent, it's had a huge positive impact because we're not doing in-person training. Typically, our region for Adriel, we're here in Urbana, we're over in Columbus, but we're also up in Toledo and Van Wert and Archibald. So we cover pretty much a quarter of the state. And so if you wanted to become a foster parent, if it would take a period of time because you have to go through selection of training classes, and we have to offer them everywhere. And so we got to get people into those positions. Well, right now, everything's online. And so everything you do from home.
That's awesome.
And that makes it a whole lot easier to get through at least the training portion. And then, of course, you still have licensing. They'll come in and they'll ask you a lot of questions about, how you plan on working with children. And, they'll make sure you meet safety expectations.
Don't have a big hole in the floor or something.
Right. Making sure some of them are a little different, like if a child has medication. So you have to have those behind a locked door, which I don't know if you have any kids on medication, but if you did, you're probably not going to lock it up more than likely. You might put it high, but you're not going to go that extra step. And so that's something in foster care. It's a little bit different. There are some different rules for sure, because you are raising somebody else's child for at least a period of time.
So, what if someone's hesitant about that next step, and what would you encourage them to do if they're like, man, I think I could foster, I want to learn about this, but I just don't know. What would you encourage them to do?
the first thing that springs to mind is tell Chris, and Chris can tell me.
That's right. All right.
And I'll hook them
I
up.
like
I'll be
that.
glad to answer the questions.
Awesome.
I did, again, we were residential. We lived in the home with the kids, so I have that degree of challenge.
Yeah.
But I did foster, I did adoption. So, I mean, all of that,
It's part of your story.
I can speak to it.
Awesome.
The good and the bad. I mean, the reality is, before we got here, I asked, which one of the kids do you most remember?
Mm-hmm.
And it's always the ones that you struggle with.
Yeah.
And that, at some point that light flicks on and you're like,
Yeah.
that's why you're smiling right
Yeah.
now. That's
Yeah.
the stories.
For sure.
There's a lot of that. Yeah, there's challenges in foster care. I don't
Right.
want to pretend
Yeah.
because then you're going to be in my training and I'm going
yeah.
to tell you the truth. There's challenges. It's hard at times,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's how God shapes you, and that's how God shapes them, and that's how this whole thing works together.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. So again, this is Warren. He's at Adriel. We'll have the website there on the screen. And if you're out there watching, this is where maybe you feel like God's leading you. Go on the website, click that button, or get a hold of us, and we'll at least pray with you and give you some guidance for next steps. And but no, there is a huge need in our community. And again, he mentioned it's almost an unseen need that we don't see all the time. And even if you just want to be a supporter and an advocate, I encourage you to learn more about the kids in our city and the kids in our area and how we can support them. So again, Warren, thanks for sitting down with us
Thank
today.
you.
And I appreciate your time, and we'll be praying for you and Adriel and again supporting you in any way we can. So
Thank you.